Hey, my name is Joshua Morin. I'm a travel filmmaker. Welcome to my weekly web series on how to make a good travel video. This week, I'm gonna give you 5 tips on how to get good portraits. Now let's get started. I want to say thanks a lot to everybody who commented and gave feedback on the last video. I appreciate all the subscriptions and likes. If you haven't checked out that video, you can check it out right here. Yeah, let's get right into it. Tip number 1 is to try to take portraits of everybody who's already around you on a trip. So instead of going up to random people on the street and taking their portraits, start off by filming people who are already around. And there's 2 reasons for that. Number 1, it will get you used to taking portraits and you'll develop your own style of how you go about taking those portraits. And the second reason is people don't realize in the final edit that these people aren't random people on the street. It's a head and shoulders shot, so most of the time, as long as they're not wearing a uniform, people won't even realize. A lot of the portraits that are most attainable are people who are working around you, or are your guide on your trip, or are friends of friends. Take portraits of everybody that you can. You just add to the collection of portraits that you can use later on in the edit. Anybody who works in the tourism trade is already used to people having cameras on them and taking photos all the time. So their inclination is always to say yes. Also, they're already paid to be there, so then you can use them for that. Keep this at the back of your head that whenever you see somebody new that is representative of that country or who lives there, then take their portrait. Tip number 2 is to film in slow motion. The reason for that is that it's easier to capture the nuances of a facial expression. The tiniest lip movement or the tiniest eye movement makes a big difference. And you don't know yet what you're going to want to use in your edit. So capturing as many frames as possible in the limited amount of time that you're taking that portrait is very beneficial later on in the edit. Tip number 3 is to pretend that you're taking a photograph instead of video. Now, I'm not telling you to tell the person that you are taking a photograph, but most of the time people just assume that, and there's no reason to tell them that you're filming instead. That just leads to bad poses and people feeling awkward. So if they start posing and they think that you're taking a photograph, just go with it. Tip number 4 is probably the biggest giveaway that I can mention today. I've developed this over a long period of time, but basically I call it fumble with your portrait. So if you're new to taking portraits, what frequently happens is, you put the camera up and you start taking the portrait and they're looking at the camera, they're looking at you, you're looking at them, and you feel awkward and then you stop rolling. And you're like, okay, I've shot maybe 3 seconds there. You get back to the edit and you've only shot maybe 1.5 seconds. Because of that feeling between you two, you feel awkward, you feel like they're waiting on you and you're taking up their time, so you rush to finish it. So a great way to overcome this is to fumble with your portrait. So what you do is you take the camera and you start rolling, you press record, you put it up to your eye, you focus, make sure that you have it all in focus, and then you look up at the person, you look down at the camera, and something's not working, so pretend to press some buttons, you look back to and then you look back to the camera again, you look back up, hit the button again, look back down, and that's it. And now you shot about 10 seconds of a video portrait without making anybody feel awkward. The advantage here is that the person thinks that you're fumbling and you haven't taken the photo yet, so they don't feel too awkward. They're holding their pose, maybe they're moving around a little bit, so it gives you a couple more options. But yeah, it's a very easy way to get a long take of a portrait without feeling awkward. So tip number 5 is to always be rolling. So in that scenario, when I was taking a portrait, I hit record first thing, and then I focus. And then I do stuff. I might go in a little bit, create some movement, but I'm always rolling. I might be fiddling with other buttons, but I'm not gonna stop that record. The reason why is that you get longer takes that way. You don't want to hit a button after, plus if your sound is on, then maybe they know that it's a video. So it's just easier, hit record, always be rolling, and try to keep your take as long as possible. Maybe put some movement in it, where you're going forward, rolling back, but always be rolling through this. Don't hit the record button on and off. Try to get as long a take as possible. Okay, I know I said that I was gonna mention 5 tips, but actually there's 7. Here's tip number 6. So let's say that you have a good subject in front of you where they're willing to have their portrait taken and they're not in a rush. What I do is I take a head and shoulders like this, and as I'm fumbling with it, I do this, I got 10 seconds. And then what I do is I say, okay, 1 second actually. And then I move up and I go really, really close, and I'll get their eyes and just a tight shot just before they leave, and maybe a 3-second shot. It's just extra footage, and it's great to have that close up so you can punch in whenever you want. And it's something that's easy to do. I started doing this pretty much with anybody who's in front of me. I try to get head and shoulders and then a close up. Tip number 7, and the last tip, is how to get good expressions. So frequently what I do while I have my camera up and I'm fumbling, I look at the person and I might just give them a smile, see what happens, you know, and then go back down. Or maybe they're already smiling and I don't want them to smile. So maybe they're smiling, I smile back, and then I go, okay, you know, I might go, and their expression will change. Now I'm rolling the whole time here, so I'm getting all of these expressions. I'm just keeping my hand very steady, and I'm trying to make them change their expression. So yeah, just play around with it. Yeah, and that should help you get a wide range of different expressions all in one take. So another thing that I wanted to mention, which isn't a tip, but a lot of people bring up all the time, is that they find that it's difficult to go up to a random person and try to take their photo. So I think that this kind of develops over time. Try to start with tip number 1, where you have people who are already accessible to you. And I think over time, you're just gonna get better and better at it. Another thing is that a lot of the best portraits that I've taken, I spent time with the person already beforehand. You know, if there's somebody that I see that is very interesting looking, I'll wander over there, and whether I can speak the language or not, I have some sort of conversation with them beforehand. I might show them a picture of my family. I might ask them questions, or try to communicate as much as I can. And then after that, if it still feels comfortable, then I'll say, can I take your photo like that? You know, if I can't speak the language, I might smile with them a little bit before, you know, just try to set them at ease. Most of the time they're gonna say yes. It's very rare that somebody says no when I ask to film them, but I think it's probably because I've done it so often that I can already get the sense that if people want to be filmed or not. You can kind of tell. So yeah, try that, and I bet you'll get better portraits, and you have more opportunity to take portraits of people. So I'm already really excited to make next week's video. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do it on, but all the subscriptions and all the comments have really kept me going. I appreciate it so much. Let me know what your thoughts are on what you want to see, and yeah, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you at the next one. Thanks.